The distant wail of a police siren jolted me awake, my heart pounding in the dimly lit bedroom. I instinctively reached across the bed, only to find the other side cold and empty. Memories of last night's argument with Eric flooded back, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. Rubbing my eyes, I glanced at the nightstand and froze. A plain white envelope propped against the lamp caught my attention. With trembling hands, I tore it open to find a note scribbled in my mother's handwriting. "Marla, we've decided to move on and start fresh. Don't try to find us. It's better this way." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. The air seemingly sucked out of the room. Start fresh? Without me? What about Luke? Panic gripped me as I scrambled to find my phone, dialing my parents' number frantically. No answer. I tried Eli's number, straight to voicemail. Clara's phone went unanswered too. My mind raced, trying to make sense of this sudden abandonment. Had I done something wrong? Was this because of the fight with Eric last night? Questions swirled relentlessly, but no answers presented themselves. Stumbling out of bed, I made my way to Luke's room, my heart sinking further at the sight of his empty crib. They wouldn't. Desperate, I searched every room, clinging to the hope that this was some cruel prank. But the truth became undeniable. They were gone, taking my son with them, leaving me alone in this big, empty house. Sinking to the floor, I cradled the note, hot tears streaming down my face. How could they do this to me, to Luke? Didn't I deserve better than a cold, impersonal goodbye? Memories of my childhood resurfaced, moments when I felt overlooked and insignificant compared to the golden children, Eli and Clara. Eli with his charming ways and academic achievements basking in our parents' pride. Clara, the obedient daughter who could do no wrong. And me, the forgotten middle child, too rebellious, too questioning for their liking. But this, abandoning me like this, taking my son away without a word, it felt like a cruel betrayal, a slap in the face from the very people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. As the sun peeked through the curtains, its warmth offering little comfort, I knew one thing for certain. I would find them, and they would answer for this injustice. If they thought a measly note could erase years of neglect and favoritism, they were sorely mistaken. This was just the beginning. In the days that followed, I found myself sinking deeper into a pit of despair. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now echoed with a deafening silence that chilled me to the bone. Every corner, every room held memories of a life that no longer existed. I tried to distract myself, throwing myself into work, but even that offered little solace. The pitying looks from colleagues only served as reminders of my newfound solitude. Evenings were the worst, the emptiness creeping in like an unwelcome guest, taunting me with visions of happier times. Desperate for answers, I pored over old family albums, searching for clues that might explain my parents' inexplicable actions. As I flipped through the pages, a disturbing pattern emerged. A stark contrast between the beaming faces of Eli and Clara and my own sullen expression, often cropped or relegated to the background. It was as if I had been an afterthought, a mere bystander in my own family's narrative. Achievements that should have been celebrated were met with indifference, while Eli's every success was lauded as a triumph of parenthood. "Look at our brilliant son," my father would proclaim, his chest puffed with pride. "He's going to make us proud." And Clara, the ever-obedient daughter, could do no wrong in my mother's eyes. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" she'd chide me. "So well-behaved and focused." Focused on what, exactly? Pleasing everyone but herself? I had always been the one to question, to challenge the status quo, and for that I was labeled the rebellious one, the black sheep of the family. One particularly vivid memory resurfaced, a Thanksgiving dinner from my teenage years. Eli had just been accepted into an Ivy League school, and the evening was a celebration of his achievement. As the family raised their glasses in toast, my father turned to me, his eyes cold and devoid of warmth. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" he sneered. "Maybe then we'd have something to be proud of." Those words cut deeper than any blade, leaving an invisible scar that never fully healed. In that moment, I knew I would never be enough in their eyes, no matter how hard I tried. As I slammed the album shut, anger coursed through my veins. All those years of neglect, of being made to feel inferior, had culminated in this ultimate betrayal. They had discarded me like a piece of unwanted baggage, whisking away my son without a second thought. A newfound determination took root, a burning desire to confront them, to make them answer for their cruelty. They would not get away with this, not while I still breathed. I would find them, and they would face the consequences of their actions, no matter the cost. The weeks that followed were a blur of anguish and anger. I found myself spiraling, consumed by the memories of a lifetime spent in the shadows of my so-called perfect siblings. Every slight, every dismissal played on a loop in my mind, fueling the flames of resentment. One particularly painful recollection stood out: my high school graduation. As I crossed the stage, diploma in hand, I scanned the crowd eagerly, hoping to catch a glimpse of pride on my parents' faces. But their eyes were fixed on Eli, who had just been awarded a prestigious scholarship. "That's my son," my father beamed, slapping Eli on the back. "He's going to make us all proud." My mother chimed in, "Yes, our brilliant boy. We're so fortunate to have him." Their words cut like knives, leaving me hollowed and invisible, even on what should have been my day to shine. Later that evening, as we celebrated with a family dinner, the conversation revolved solely around Eli's accomplishments and future plans. I tried to interject, to share my own hopes and dreams, but my voice was quickly drowned out by my mother's gushing praises for my overachieving brother. "Marla, dear, don't you wish you could be more like your brother?" she said, her tone laced with condescension. "He's going to do such great things." The implication was clear: I would never measure up, no matter what I achieved. In their eyes, I was already a lost cause, a disappointment. As the evening wore on, I retreated to the safety of my room, my diploma clutched tightly in my hands. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at the once cherished piece of paper, now a cruel reminder of my insignificance. "Why bother even trying?" I whispered to myself. "They'll never see me, not really." In that moment, a part of me withered, replaced by a simmering resentment that would only grow stronger with each passing year. Even after I had Luke, my own child, my parents' favoritism persisted. While they doted on their grandchildren from Eli and Clara, showering them with love and attention, Luke was often an afterthought, a mere obligation. "He's such a fussy baby," my mother would remark, her nose wrinkled in disdain. "Are you sure you're doing everything right?" The implication was clear. I was a failure, even as a mother. As these memories resurfaced, I found myself consumed by a burning rage, a desire for vengeance that threatened to consume me whole. They had taken everything from me: my family, my son, my sense of self-worth, and for what? Because I didn't fit their mold of perfection? Well, no more. I would make them see me, even if it was the last thing I did. They would pay for their cruelty, for the years of emotional torture they had inflicted. And this time, they would be the ones left in the shadows, forgotten and insignificant. With a newfound determination, I began to formulate a plan, a way to make them truly understand the depth of their betrayal. Revenge would be mine, and it would be sweet. Just when I thought I had hit rock bottom, a glimmer of hope appeared in the form of my estranged Uncle Jack. I hadn't seen or spoken to him in years, not since the falling out he had with my parents over some long-forgotten slight. The doorbell rang one dreary afternoon, jolting me from my self-imposed misery. I shuffled to the door, half expecting it to be another debt collector or someone peddling unwanted wares. But when I opened it, there stood Jack, a somber expression etched onto his weathered face. "Marla," he said, his voice thick with concern, "I heard what happened." Before I could respond, he pulled me into a tight embrace, and something within me broke. The floodgates opened, and I sobbed uncontrollably into his shoulder, all the pain and anguish I had bottled up spilling forth. Jack ushered me inside, his strong, calloused hands guiding me to the couch. He listened patiently as I poured out the sordid tale of my family's betrayal, his eyes flickering with a mixture of sadness and rage. "Those bastards," he muttered, shaking his head. "I always knew they were twisted, but this is a new low." For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of validation, of being truly seen and understood. Jack had always been the outsider, the one who refused to buy into my parents' illusion of perfection. "You don't deserve this, kiddo," he said, his voice laced with conviction. "You're worth 1,000 of them, and it's about time someone showed you that." In that moment, Jack became my lifeline, offering me a safe haven away from the suffocating loneliness of the house. He insisted I stay with him, at least until I could get back on my feet. No arguments, he stated firmly when I tried to protest. You need someone in your corner, and I'll be damned if I let those vultures pick over what's left of you. And so, with a heavy heart and a single duffel bag of belongings, I said goodbye to the home that had once been my sanctuary, now tainted by the ghosts of happier times. Jack's modest apartment became my refuge, a place where I could start to piece together the shattered fragments of my life. Over the following weeks, he became my rock, offering unwavering support and guidance as I navigated the turbulent waters of single motherhood and abandonment. He listened without judgment as I shared my deepest fears and insecurities, the wounds inflicted by years of parental neglect. You've got a strength in you, kid, he'd say, his eyes alight with pride. A fire that those fools could never extinguish, no matter how hard they tried. Slowly, with Jack's encouragement, I began to rebuild. I enrolled in night classes, determined to finish the degree I had abandoned years earlier. And as the pieces of my life started to fall into place, a new sense of purpose took root. A burning desire to not just survive, but to thrive, to rise like a phoenix from the ashes of my past. My revenge would come, not through petty vengeance, but through success, a resounding triumph over the doubts and limitations that had been imposed upon me for far too long. And when the time was right, when I had climbed to the heights they never thought possible, I would confront them, and they would be forced to reckon with the woman I had become. Strong, resilient, and unapologetic. The following months were a whirlwind of determination and hard work. With Jack's unwavering support, I threw myself into my studies, determined to make up for lost time. The late nights spent poring over textbooks and cramming for exams became a welcome distraction from the lingering ache of my family's betrayal. You've got this, kiddo, Jack would say, sliding a fresh cup of coffee across the table as I buried myself in research papers. Show those bastards what you're really made of. His words fueled me, igniting a fire within that refused to be extinguished. I was no longer the overlooked, underestimated middle child. I was a force to be reckoned with, and I would stop at nothing to prove my worth. As the semesters flew by, my grades soared, and I found myself drawn to the world of entrepreneurship. The idea of building something from the ground up, of carving my own path, resonated deeply within me. It was a chance to shed the shackles of my past and forge a new identity, one defined by my own ambitions and achievements. I want to start my own business, I confided in Jack one evening, my eyes alight with determination. Something that's truly mine, something they can't take away from me. Jack's face broke into a wide grin, and he clapped me on the shoulder. That's my girl, he said, pride evident in his voice. You've got the fire, the drive. Now it's time to show the world what you're capable of. With his encouragement, I began to flesh out my ideas, poring over market research and drafting business plans late into the night. The concept was simple, yet innovative, a service that would revolutionize the way people approached personal finance and wealth management. As graduation loomed, I found myself standing before Jack, diploma in hand, a triumphant smile etched across my face. This time, there were no shadows to lurk in, no overbearing expectations to weigh me down. This achievement was mine and mine alone. I knew you had it in you, Jack said, pulling me into a fierce hug. Now it's time to take on the world. And take it on I did. With Jack's financial backing and unwavering belief in me, I launched my fledgling business, pouring every ounce of my being into making it a success. The long hours and countless sacrifices were a small price to pay for the chance to forge my own destiny. As the months ticked by, my hard work began to pay off. Word of my innovative approach spread like wildfire, and soon clients were beating down my door. With each success, each milestone reached, I felt a sense of vindication, a silent victory over those who had doubted and dismissed me. But beneath the surface, a burning desire for retribution simmered, fueled by the memories of a childhood spent in the shadows. I knew deep down that true fulfillment would only come when I had faced my demons head-on, when I had made my family confront the consequences of their actions. And as my empire grew, as the accolades and media attention poured in, I knew that day was fast approaching. They would soon see the woman they had so callously cast aside, the phoenix that had risen from the ashes of their cruelty. And when they did, They would have no choice but to bow before the force of my resilience and determination. Revenge was no longer a fleeting desire. It was an inevitability, a reckoning that would shake the very foundations of the life they had built on lies and favoritism. And I, Marla, the once forgotten daughter, would be the architect of their undoing. The years that followed were a whirlwind of success and validation. My business took off like a rocket, quickly becoming the go-to solution for financial planning and wealth management. Clients flocked to my innovative approach, drawn to the fresh perspective and personalized service I offered. As the accolades and media attention poured in, I found myself basking in the spotlight, a far cry from the shadows I had once inhabited within my own family. Each award, each glowing review, felt like a triumph over the doubts and limitations that had been imposed upon me for so long. "This is just the beginning, kiddo," Jack would say, beaming with pride as we celebrated another milestone. "You're showing those fools what they missed out on." And indeed, with each passing year, my success seemed to grow exponentially. My name became synonymous with excellence, my methods lauded as revolutionary. I was living, breathing proof that perseverance and determination could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. Yet, beneath the surface, a part of me remained unsettled, a hunger for retribution that could not be sated by professional accomplishments alone. As my empire expanded, so too did the nagging desire to confront the demons of my past, to make my family reckon with the consequences of their actions. It was during one of my many media interviews that the opportunity presented itself. The reporter, a seasoned veteran known for her hard-hitting questions, couldn't resist delving into my personal life. "Your success is truly remarkable," she said, her piercing gaze fixed upon me. "But what drives you, Miss Johnson? What fuels this insatiable ambition?" For a moment I considered deflecting, offering up the usual platitudes about hard work and dedication, but something within me snapped, and the floodgates opened. "Revenge," I stated, my voice steady and unwavering. "A burning desire to prove wrong those who doubted me, who tried to break me." The reporter's eyes widened, and she leaned forward, sensing a juicy story. "Care to elaborate?" And so I did. I laid bare the sordid tale of my childhood, the years spent in the shadows of my perfect siblings, the emotional neglect and manipulation that had left indelible scars. I spoke of the ultimate betrayal, the cold goodbye that had torn my life asunder and set me on this relentless path to success. As the words tumbled out raw and unfiltered, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The carefully constructed facade I had built, the mask of composed professionalism, crumbled away, revealing the raw, wounded soul beneath. The interview was a sensation, my candid revelations sparking a media frenzy. Overnight, I became the subject of intense scrutiny, my personal life dissected and analyzed by the masses. And then, like moths drawn to a flame, they emerged from the shadows. My estranged family, their once pristine image now tarnished by the harsh light of truth. It started with a tentative phone call from Clara, her voice trembling with a mixture of shame and desperation. "Marla," she pleaded, "we need to talk. They're not what they seem." I could sense the vulnerability in her words, the cracks beginning to show in the facade of perfection they had so carefully cultivated. "Talk," I scoffed. "About what, dear sister? About how you stood by and watched as our parents played favorites? As they systematically crushed my spirit and self-worth?" The line went silent, and I knew I had struck a nerve. But Clara was merely the opening salvo. Soon the calls and messages came pouring in, each one more desperate than the last. My parents, their once lofty pedestals crumbling beneath the weight of their own lies and manipulation, begged for a chance to explain, to make amends. And in that moment I realized the true depths of my revenge. It wasn't simply about success or triumph. It was about stripping away the illusion they had clung to for so long, laying bare the ugly truth for all to see. With a newfound sense of power, I agreed to meet them, to hear their explanations and excuses. But deep down, I knew that no apology, no justification could ever undo the damage they had wrought. They had sown the seeds of their own destruction, and now they would reap the bitter harvest of their actions. And I, the once forgotten daughter, would be the one to deliver the final blow, the reckoning they had so long avoided. The day of the long-awaited reunion dawned, and I found myself a bundle of mixed emotions: anger, anticipation, and a strange sense of power. After years of being the overlooked, underestimated daughter, the tables had turned, and now they were the ones seeking my approval, my mercy. I had chosen the location carefully. A sleek, upscale restaurant in the heart of the city, a far cry from the cozy, familiar diners of our childhood. This was my domain, my territory, and they would be forced to play by my rules. As I strode through the doors, heads turned, whispers rippling through the hushed murmurs of the patrons. My name, once a mere afterthought, now carried weight, commanding respect and attention. And there they were, huddled at a corner table like errant children summoned before the principal. My parents, their once proud demeanors diminished, their eyes downcast and ashamed. Eli, the golden child, his once charming veneer cracked and worn. And Clara, her mask of perfection slipping, revealing the insecurities that had long festered beneath. "Marla," my mother croaked, her voice trembling, "we're so glad you agreed to meet with us." I said nothing, simply sliding into the empty chair and fixing them with an icy stare. Let them squirm, let them feel the weight of their transgressions bearing down upon them. "We owe you an apology," my father chimed in, his words hollow and rehearsed. "We've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, and you suffered because of them." Eli nodded vigorously, his eyes pleading for forgiveness. "We never meant to make you feel lesser, sis. You have to believe that." I wanted to scream, to hurl the catalog of grievances I had compiled over the years directly in their faces. But I remained silent, allowing the tension to build, the discomfort to fester. It was Clara who finally broke, her carefully constructed facade crumbling as tears streamed down her face. "Please, Marla," she sobbed. "We need your help. We've lost everything, the business, the money, everything. You're our only hope." Ah, there it was, the true reason for this little charade, the desperation that had driven them to seek me out after all these years. Not genuine remorse or a desire to make amends, but the cold, harsh reality of their own failings. A bitter laugh escaped my lips, and I shook my head slowly, savoring the moment. "Help?" I echoed, my voice dripping with contempt. "After everything you've put me through, you have the audacity to ask for my help?" Their faces fell, the weight of their mistakes finally settling upon them like a oppressive shroud. "But you're our daughter," my mother stammered, grasping at straws. "Our flesh and blood. Surely you can find it in your heart to forgive us." Forgive them after years of emotional neglect, of being made to feel like an afterthought in my own family? The very notion was laughable. "Forgiveness?" I spat, leaning forward, my eyes blazing with barely contained fury. "You want forgiveness? Then you'll have to earn it, on my terms." The words hung in the air, heavy and loaded with implications. They knew, deep down, that this wasn't a simple request for aid. It was a reckoning, a chance for them to atone for the sins of the past. "Anything," Eli pleaded, his once proud demeanor reduced to shameful groveling. "Just name your price." A cruel smile twisted my lips as I surveyed their pathetic, broken forms. The power, the control, was intoxicating, a heady brew of vindication and retribution. "Family counseling," I stated, my voice firm and unyielding. "All of us together, laying bare the ugly truths we've been carrying for far too long. And not just a few sessions, but a true, deep dive into the dysfunctional cesspool that spawned our so-called family." Their faces registered a mixture of shock and horror, but I pressed on, relentless. "And that's just the beginning. If you want my help, if you want a chance at redemption, you'll have to confront the demons you've been running from for years. Every slight, every betrayal, every ounce of pain you've inflicted upon me, it all comes to light. No more secrets, no more lies." The weight of my demands settled upon them, crushing and inescapable. This was their penance, their opportunity to bare their souls and face the consequences of their actions. "Well," I challenged, arching an eyebrow, "what's it going to be? Freedom from the past, or a lifetime of regrets?" In that moment, they knew. The tables had turned, and I held all the cards. Their once perfect family, the veneer of success and unity, had crumbled to dust. And I, the forgotten daughter, had risen from the ashes, a phoenix reborn, ready to burn away the lies and deceit that had poisoned us for far too long. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of confrontation and raw emotion. True to my demands, we began family counseling sessions, intense, no-holds-barred explorations into the twisted dynamics that had fractured us for so long. Let's start at the beginning, the therapist said. Her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the palpable tension in the room. Marla, share with us your earliest memories of feeling overlooked or neglected. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the onslaught of painful recollections that threatened to spill forth. Beside me, my parents shifted uncomfortably, their faces etched with apprehension. I was 7 years old, I began, my voice thick with barely contained emotion. It was my birthday, and all I wanted was for my parents to be there, to make me feel special, just for one day. The memories came flooding back, raw and vivid. But instead, they were fawning over Ely, praising him for some academic achievement or another. I remember sitting alone in the living room, clutching my teddy bear, listening to the sounds of celebration from the other room. My mother opened her mouth to protest, but the therapist silenced her with a raised hand. "Let her speak," she said, her tone firm yet compassionate. And speak I did, unleashing a torrent of pent-up grievances and resentments that had festered for decades. Each memory, each slight, laid bare for all to witness. The time Clara received a lavish quinceañera while my 16th birthday went unacknowledged. The countless school plays and recitals where my parents' seats remained empty, their attention focused elsewhere. As the words tumbled out, I could see the impact they had, like daggers piercing the delusions my family had clung to for so long. Eli's confident facade cracked, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Clara, once the perfect daughter, dissolved into quiet sobs, her mask of composure shattered. And my parents? Their reactions were perhaps the most visceral of all. Gone was the smug indifference, the dismissive attitudes that had once been their armor. In its place, a raw, naked vulnerability, a dawning realization of the damage they had wrought. We never meant to make you feel that way," my father stammered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "We were just so focused on their successes, we lost sight of everything else." My mother nodded, her eyes downcast with shame. "We failed you, Marla. We failed as parents, and there's no excuse for that." In that moment, I felt a strange sense of vindication, a twisted form of justice. For years, they had brushed aside my feelings, my very existence, in pursuit of their idea of perfection. But now, confronted with the harsh reality of their actions, they had no choice but to face the consequences. The sessions continued, each one peeling back another layer of the toxic familial onion. Resentments were aired, old wounds reopened, and through it all, a strange sense of catharsis began to take hold. But even as the healing process began, a part of me remained guarded, wary of their intentions. Were they truly committed to change, or was this simply a last-ditch effort to regain my favor, to secure the financial assistance they so desperately craved? The answer came during one particularly heated session, when the therapist broached the subject of their ultimate betrayal, the cold, impersonal goodbye that had shattered my world. "Why did you do it?" I demanded, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "Why did you take my son away from me, without a word, without any explanation?" For a moment they were silent, their eyes downcast, ashamed. Then, in a move that surprised us all, Eli spoke up, his voice thick with remorse. "It was my idea," he confessed, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "I was the one who convinced Mom and Dad to cut ties, to start over without the baggage of the past." The revelation hung in the air like a lead weight, suffocating and damning. "You," I whispered, my hands curling into fists, "you took my child from me, my own flesh and blood, because he was baggage?" Eli flinched, his body recoiling from the venom in my words. "I was selfish," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I wanted a clean slate, a chance to rebuild our family's legacy without the distractions of the past." In that moment, the floodgates burst open, and a torrent of rage and anguish poured forth. I hurled every insult, every curse at their trembling forms, my vision blurred by tears of fury. The session descended into chaos, the therapist's attempts to regain control drowned out by the force of my emotional maelstrom. And as the dust settled, a sobering realization took hold. There was no redemption to be found here, no path to forgiveness or reconciliation. They had crossed a line, a boundary that could never be uncrossed. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. With a heavy heart, I turned to face the shattered remnants of my family, my eyes steeled with resolution. This is over," I declared, my voice steady and unwavering. "I gave you a chance, an opportunity to make amends, and you squandered it. Their protests fell on deaf ears as I rose to my feet, gathering my belongings. I don't need your money or your help, I continued, each word slicing through the tension like a razor-sharp blade. I've built something for myself, something real and lasting without your interference. And as I turned to leave, I couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness, a lingering ache for the family I had once longed for but could never have. Goodbye, I whispered, more to myself than to them. And this time it's for good. With those parting words, I stepped out into the world, a weight lifted from my shoulders. The shackles of the past had been severed, the cycle of toxicity broken. My revenge, in the end, was not a grand act of retribution, but a simple act of defiance. A refusal to be defined by the pain and neglect of my upbringing. I had risen from the ashes, a phoenix reborn, and I would forge my own path, one unmarred by the sins of my family. And as I looked towards the future, a newfound sense of clarity washed over me. The past could no longer hold me hostage. I was free to embrace the life I had fought so hard to build, surrounded by those who truly loved and supported me. Jack's beaming smile and the innocent laughter of my son filled my heart with a warmth I had never known, a love untainted by the baggage of dysfunction and betrayal. This was my legacy, my true family, a bond forged not by blood, but by the shared triumphs and hardships that had shaped us. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them head-on, unbowed and unbroken, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. For I was Marla, the phoenix risen from the ashes, and my story was just beginning. If you ever lay a hand on me again, I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your miserable life. The words tumbled out of my mouth before I could stop them, my body trembling with a mixture of fear and rage as I stared into the cold, unforgiving eyes of my husband, Derek. His fist clenched at his side, knuckles white with fury, and for a moment I thought he might strike me again. But then a twisted smile spread across his lips, and he let out a low, menacing chuckle that sent shivers down my spine. "You think you can threaten me, Mallory?" he spat, taking a step closer. "You're nothing without me. You'd be lost, alone, and penniless if it weren't for my generosity." I swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill down my cheeks. This wasn't the first time Derek had lashed out at me, but it was the first time I dared to stand up to him. For too long, I'd been trapped in this gilded cage, blinded by the illusion of the perfect life we'd built together. From the outside, we were the picture of success. A powerful business mogul and his doting wife, raising our beautiful daughter, Ava, in a sprawling mansion in the heart of the city. But behind closed doors, Derek's true nature revealed itself, a toxic blend of manipulation and control that had slowly isolated me from my friends and family. "I'm warning you, Derek," I said, my voice quivering despite my best efforts to sound strong. "If you ever touch me or Ava again, I'll leave, and I'll make sure you never find us." His eyes narrowed, and for a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of fear cross his features. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by that familiar smirk that made my skin crawl. "You're not going anywhere," he growled, closing the distance between us. "You're mine, Mallory, and if you ever try to leave, I'll make sure you regret it." With that, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the room, leaving me alone with the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. I sank to the floor, my body racked with sobs as the reality of my situation crashed down around me. I had to get out, for Ava's sake and for my own. But how? Derek had made it clear that he wouldn't let us go without a fight, and I knew firsthand how far he was willing to go to get what he wanted. As the tears streamed down my face, I silently vowed to find a way. No matter what it took, I would break free from Derek's grip and build a life for Ava and myself, far away from his toxic influence. It was time to stop living in fear and take back control of my life. The next few days were a blur of tension and unease. Derek's outburst had shaken me to my core, but I knew I couldn't let fear paralyze me. I had to act, for Ava's sake, if not my own. As I went about my daily routine, I found myself constantly on edge, jumping at every sound, every movement in my peripheral vision. Derek, for his part, seemed to revel in my discomfort, shooting me smug glances whenever our paths crossed. "Mom, are you okay?" Ava asked one evening as we sat down for dinner, her brow furrowed with concern. You've been acting really weird lately. I forced a smile, reaching across the table to give her hand a reassuring squeeze. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little stressed at work, that's all. Derek scoffed, shaking his head. Your mother's always been a worrier, Ava. It's nothing new. His words cut deep, but I bit my tongue, unwilling to provoke another confrontation in front of our daughter. Instead, I turned my attention back to Ava, determined to keep our conversation light and casual. But as the days wore on, it became increasingly difficult to maintain the facade. Derek's verbal jabs grew more frequent, more pointed, and I found myself constantly on the defensive, struggling to keep my composure. It all came to a head one night after Ava had gone to bed. Derek and I were alone in the living room, and he wasted no time in launching into another tirade. You think you're so high and mighty, don't you? He sneered. His words slurred from the countless glasses of scotch he'd downed. You think you're better than me, but you're nothing without my money and my name. That's not true, I protested, my voice trembling. I've worked just as hard as you have to build this life for our family. He let out a harsh laugh, shaking his head. You're delusional, Mallory. You're nothing but a pretty face, a trophy wife to hang on my arm and make me look good. Before I could react, he was on his feet, towering over me with a look of pure rage twisting his features. Maybe I need to remind you of your place, he growled, raising his hand as if to strike me. I flinched, bracing myself for the blow, but it never came. Instead, Derek stumbled backward, nearly losing his balance as he glared at me with a mixture of contempt and something else, something I couldn't quite place. You're pathetic, he spat, turning on his heel and storming out of the room, leaving me shaken and wondering how much longer I could endure this living hell. As I sat there in the silence, my mind raced, trying to make sense of the turmoil that had become my life. I knew I had to get out, but the thought of leaving filled me with a paralyzing fear. What if Derek found us? What if he made good on his threats? I jumped as my phone buzzed, pulling me from my dark thoughts. It was a text from Samantha, my best friend and the only person I trusted enough to confide in. Are you okay? I have a bad feeling about Derek. Please tell me you're safe. Tears stung my eyes as I read her words, a wave of relief washing over me. Samantha had always been my rock, my voice of reason in the darkest of times. Maybe, just maybe, she could help me find the strength to break free. With trembling fingers, I typed out a response. I need your help. Samantha's arrival was like a breath of fresh air. As soon as she stepped through the door, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, the tension that had been coiling inside me for weeks finally beginning to unravel. Oh, honey? She murmured, pulling me into a tight embrace. I'm so sorry you've been going through this alone. I clung to her, fighting back tears as the floodgates threatened to open. I don't know what to do, Sam. He's become so volatile, so unpredictable. I'm scared for Ava and myself. She pulled back, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination. You're going to leave him. That's what you're going to do. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Leave Derek? The thought had crossed my mind more times than I could count, but the fear of his retaliation had always held me back. I can't, I whispered, shaking my head. You know how vindictive he can be. If I try to leave, he'll make our lives a living hell. Samantha's grip on my shoulders tightened, her gaze unwavering. Mallory, listen to me. You are stronger than this. You have to be strong, for Ava's sake, if not your own. Derek is a monster, and you can't let him control you any longer. Her words struck a chord deep within me, igniting a spark of defiance that I thought had long since been extinguished. She was right. I couldn't let Derek continue to hold this power over me, over our family. Okay, I said, my voice trembling but resolute. Okay, I'll do it. I'll leave him. Samantha's face broke into a relieved smile, and she pulled me into another fierce hug. Thank God. We'll figure this out, Mal. I promise. You and Ava are going to be safe. Over the next few days, we hatched our plan. Samantha helped me open a secret bank account, squirreling away as much money as I could without arousing Derek's suspicion. We researched safe houses, potential places we could go to start over, far away from his reach. All the while, I walked on eggshells around Derek, careful not to give him any inkling of my intentions. But the strain was starting to show, and he grew increasingly suspicious of my behavior. "What's going on with you lately?" he demanded one night, cornering me in the kitchen. "You've been acting strange, distant." I forced a smile, willing my hands not to tremble. "It's nothing, Derek. I've just been stressed with work, that's all." His eyes narrowed and he took a step closer, backing me against the counter. "Don't lie to me, Mallory. I know when you're hiding something." My heart pounded in my chest as he leaned in, his breath hot on my face. "If I find out you're up to something, you'll regret it. Do you understand?" I nodded mutely, too terrified to speak. Derek held my gaze for a few more agonizing seconds before turning and stalking out of the room, leaving me shaken to my core. As soon as he was gone, I sank to the floor, burying my face in my hands as the sobs racked my body. How much longer could I keep this up? How much longer before Derek saw through my lies and unleashed his fury upon us? I knew then that I had to act fast. Our lives depended on it. It all came crashing down one fateful night. I should have been more careful, more vigilant, but in my desperation to gather enough funds for our escape, I grew careless. I had just returned from a clandestine meeting with Samantha, slipping the latest cash withdrawal into the hidden compartment in my closet, when I heard the unmistakable sound of Derek's footsteps approaching. My heart dropped into my stomach as he flung open the bedroom door, his face contorted with rage. In his hand, he clutched a crumpled envelope, one of the many I had used to squirrel away our escape money. "What is this?" he snarled, brandishing the envelope like a weapon. "What the hell have you been up to, Mallory?" I froze, my mind racing as I scrambled for an excuse, any lie that might defuse the situation. But Derek was having none of it. In a flash, he crossed the room and yanked open the closet door, his eyes widening as he discovered the hidden stash of cash. "You lying bitch," he growled, whirling on me with a look of pure fury. "You were planning to leave me, weren't you?" I tried to speak, to explain, but the words caught in my throat as Derek advanced on me, his fists clenched at his sides. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" he roared, spittle flying from his lips. "You ungrateful whore." Before I could react, his hand lashed out, striking me across the face with such force that I stumbled backwards, stars dancing before my eyes. "Derek, please," I begged, tasting blood on my split lip. "I was only trying to protect Ava and myself. You've become so volatile, so abusive. I couldn't take it anymore." His eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of remorse cross his features. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a cold, calculating fury that chilled me to the bone. "You're not going anywhere," he hissed, grabbing a fistful of my hair and wrenching my head back. "You belong to me, Mallory, and if you ever try to leave again, I swear to God, I'll take everything from you, including Ava." The mention of our daughter's name sent a wave of panic crashing over me. I couldn't let him hurt her, not my sweet, innocent Ava. "Please, Derek," I sobbed, clawing at his iron grip. "Don't bring her into this. She's just a child." He let out a cruel laugh, his grip tightening until I thought my scalp might tear. "She's my child too, Mallory. And if you think you can take her away from me, you're sorely mistaken." With a final, vicious yank, he released me, sending me crumpling to the floor in a heap. As I lay there, cradling my throbbing head, I knew in that moment that our lives were in grave danger. We had to get out, and fast, before Derek's rage spiraled out of control. Because this time, I feared there would be no coming back. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. As soon as Derek stormed out of the bedroom, I sprang into action, my mind laser-focused on one goal: getting Ava and myself out of that house before it was too late. I scrambled to gather our essentials: a few changes of clothes, our passports, and the meager stash of cash I had managed to squirrel away before Derek discovered my plan. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough to get us started on our new life, wherever that may be. My hands trembled as I packed, my heart pounding in my chest with each passing minute. I knew Derek wouldn't be gone long, and when he returned, his fury would be tenfold. As if on cue, I heard the unmistakable sound of his car pulling into the driveway, the tires crunching on the gravel like a death knell. I had to move fast. Abandoning the half-packed bag, I raced down the hall to Ava's room, bursting through the door to find her sitting cross-legged on her bed, earbuds in and oblivious to the chaos unfolding around her. "Ava!" I hissed, startling her from her reverie. "We have to go now." Her eyes widened, confusion and fear flickering across her delicate features. "Mom, what's going on? What's happening?" I grabbed her by the shoulders, my grip perhaps a little too tight as I fought to keep my panic at bay. "There's no time to explain. We have to leave before your father gets back. Our lives depend on it." She must have seen the desperation in my eyes, because she didn't argue or question me further. With a shaky nod, she rose from the bed and followed me back to the bedroom, where I hurriedly stuffed the last of our belongings into the bag. The sound of the front door slamming sent a jolt of terror through me, and I froze, my heart in my throat. "Mallory." Derek's voice boomed from downstairs, laced with a menacing fury that made my blood run cold. "Where the hell are you, you lying bitch?" Ava whimpered, her eyes wide with fear, and I knew we had to move, now or never. Slinging the bag over my shoulder, I grabbed her hand and pulled her towards the bedroom window, my mind racing as I formulated our escape route. "We're going out this way," I whispered, already working to pry open the stubborn pain. "There's a trellis on the side of the house. We can climb down and make a run for the car." Ava nodded, her face pale but resolute. In that moment, I saw a strength in her that I hadn't realized she possessed, a steely determination that filled me with equal parts pride and sorrow. No child should ever have to experience the horrors we had endured. With a final heave, the window gave way, and I ushered Ava through, following close behind, just as the sound of Derek's thunderous footsteps reached the top of the stairs. We moved quickly, silently, our hearts pounding in tandem as we shimmied down the trellis and hit the ground running. The car was just ahead, our salvation glinting in the moonlight like a beacon of hope. But as we neared it, a figure emerged from the shadows, blocking our path. "Derek? Going somewhere?" He sneered, his eyes glinting with a feral madness that sent chills down my spine. In that moment, time seemed to slow to a crawl. I could see the rage etched into every line of Derek's face, the hatred burning in his eyes as he stared us down like cornered prey. And in that moment, I knew. There was no going back. The days and weeks that followed our escape were a blur of constant motion, a never-ending cycle of fleeing and hiding. We couldn't risk staying in one place for too long, not with Derek's resources and his unquenchable thirst for revenge. Samantha had been our lifeline, our guardian angel in those early days. She helped us secure false identities, safe houses, and transportation as we hopscotched across the country, always one step ahead of Derek's hired goons. But the psychological toll of living in perpetual fear was immense. Ava, my once vibrant and carefree daughter, grew sullen and withdrawn, her eyes haunted by the horrors she had witnessed. And I, too, found myself jumping at every shadow, every unexpected sound, my nerves frayed to the breaking point. Still, we persevered, driven by the knowledge that the alternative, falling back into Derek's clutches, was unthinkable. It was during one of our brief respites, holed up in a dingy motel on the outskirts of some nameless town, that the first crack in our defenses appeared. "Mom, how much longer are we going to have to keep running?" Ava asked, her voice small and defeated as she stared out the grimy window. I swallowed hard, my heart aching at the weariness etched into her young features. "As long as it takes, sweetheart, until we're sure your father can't find us." She turned to face me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "But what if he never stops looking? What if we have to spend the rest of our lives like this, always running, always afraid?" The questions hung heavy in the air, their weight crushing me under the weight of their implications. Because deep down, I knew she was right. Derek was a man possessed, and he would stop at nothing to track us down, to exact his twisted brand of revenge. "I don't know, Ava," I admitted, my voice thick with emotion, "but I promise you, we'll find a way to make it through this. Together." She nodded, but the spark of hope in her eyes had dimmed, replaced by a weary resignation that broke my heart. In that moment, I vowed to find a way to end this nightmare, once and for all. We couldn't go on living like this, constantly looking over our shoulders, our lives forever tainted by the specter of Derek's rage. It was time to take the fight to him. Over the next few weeks, I began to hatch a plan, reaching out to old contacts, calling in favors, and assembling a team of people I could trust to help bring Derek down. It was a risky gambit, but one I was willing to take if it meant finally securing our freedom. And then, just when I thought we had hit another dead end, A break in the case arrived in the form of an anonymous tip. Derek's location, his movements, his routine. It was the opportunity we had been waiting for, the chance to strike back and end this twisted game of cat and mouse once and for all. As I relayed the information to my team, a sense of grim determination settled over me. This was it, the moment we had been preparing for. The showdown was inevitable, and only one of us would emerge victorious. I only hoped that when the dust settled, Ava and I would be the ones left standing. The safe house was a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of town, its weathered exterior belying the high-tech command center that lay within. As I stepped through the reinforced steel door, my heart was pounding in my chest, a heady mix of adrenaline and trepidation coursing through my veins. "You're sure about this, Mal?" Samantha's voice broke the tense silence, her eyes searching mine for any hint of doubt or hesitation. "There's no going back after tonight." I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve as I gave her a curt nod. "I'm sure Derek has to be stopped once and for all, for Ava's sake, if not my own." She pursed her lips, clearly not thrilled with the plan but respecting my decision nonetheless. "All right then, let's get this show on the road." Around us, the team of ex-military operatives and private investigators I had assembled sprang into action, checking weapons and running final system diagnostics. The air was thick with tension, the weight of what was to come hanging over us like a shroud. "We have eyes on the target," came a gruff voice from the comm station, shattering the silence. "He's just left his office and is en route to the rendezvous point." My breath caught in my throat as a grainy image of Derek flickered onto the main monitor. His face twisted into a scowl as he stalked towards his waiting car. Seeing him again, even through the distorted lens of a surveillance camera, sent a chill down my spine and reignited the smoldering embers of fear and rage that had burned within me for so long. "Remember, we need him alive," I reminded the team, my voice steadier than I felt. "At least for now, he has to face justice for what he's done." A chorus of grunts and nods met my words. The men and women around me hardened professionals who understood the gravity of the situation. Still, I couldn't shake the nagging sense of dread that had taken root in the pit of my stomach. What if something went wrong? What if Derek managed to slip through our grasp once again, disappearing into the ether and leaving us to pick up the pieces of our shattered lives? I pushed the doubts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. This was our one shot, our chance to end this nightmare once and for all. Failure was not an option. The minutes ticked by like hours as we waited with bated breath, tracking Derek's movements on the monitors until finally the call came in. He's arrived at the rendezvous point, moving into position. My heart leapt into my throat as the team sprang into action, donning tactical gear and checking weapons one last time before filing out of the safe house and into the waiting armored vehicles. "Stay safe," Samantha murmured, pulling me into a fierce hug. "And give that bastard hell for me." I nodded, unable to find the words as a lump formed in my throat. This was it, the moment I had been both dreading and anticipating for what felt like an eternity. As the convoy roared to life and peeled out onto the deserted street, I found myself gripping the edge of the console, my knuckles white with tension. Every fiber of my being was focused on the mission, on the confrontation that was about to unfold. Derek's reign of terror was about to come to an end. One way or another, tonight would be the end of the road, and I would be the one to put the final nail in his coffin. The days and weeks following Derek's capture were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media scrutiny, and the long, arduous process of picking up the pieces of our shattered lives. But through it all, a weight had been lifted, a burden that had pressed down on Ava and me for far too long. As the truth about Derek's abuse and his relentless pursuit of us came to light, the world seemed to hold its collective breath, transfixed by the sordid tale of a once powerful man brought low by his own monstrous actions. And while the court of public opinion was swift and merciless in its condemnation, it was the judicial system's reckoning that truly mattered. The trial was a grueling ordeal, with Derek's high-priced legal team doing everything in their power to cast doubt on our testimony and paint him as the victim. But in the end, the evidence was too overwhelming, the pattern of abuse too well documented to be denied. When the guilty verdict was read, A hush fell over the courtroom, broken only by the soft sound of Derek's sobs as he was led away in chains. In that moment, I felt a sense of vindication, of justice finally being served after years of living in fear and torment. But more than that, I felt a profound sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders, allowing me to breathe freely for the first time in what felt like an eternity. In the days and weeks that followed, Ava and I began the slow process of rebuilding our lives, piece by shattered piece. It wasn't easy. The scars of our ordeal ran deep, both physical and emotional, but we were determined to forge ahead, to reclaim the happiness and sense of security that had been stolen from us for far too long. Samantha was a constant source of strength and support, her unwavering friendship a lifeline that helped us navigate the choppy waters of our newfound freedom. Together, we found a cozy little apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a far cry from the opulent prison we had once called home. But to me, it was a palace, a sanctuary where we could finally let our guard down and begin to heal. As the months passed, I watched with a mixture of pride and wonder as Ava blossomed before my eyes, the shadows that had haunted her gaze gradually giving way to a newfound sense of joy and optimism. She threw herself into her studies, determined to make the most of the second chance we had been given, and I couldn't have been prouder of the strong, resilient young woman she was becoming. For my part, I found solace in the simple pleasures of life. Long walks in the park, lazy Sunday mornings spent curled up with a good book, and evenings spent laughing and reminiscing with Samantha over a bottle of wine. It was a far cry from the high-powered corporate world I had once inhabited, but in many ways it was infinitely more fulfilling. And through it all, the specter of Derek's legacy faded, his once formidable presence reduced to a mere footnote in the story of our lives. We had survived his reign of terror, emerging from the ashes stronger and more resilient than ever before. As I watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was excited to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Because now, we were free to chart our own course, to write our own story, and to embrace the future with open arms. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.